Hi, it's Katrina. What if the walls of our world weren't so solid? What if there were thin places in time and space and all we needed was a doorway to the other side? The ancient Egyptians believed they could make these portals by creating a false door, a portal beckoning the spirits of the dead. From ancient Peru to Japan to Ireland, there are ancient gateways to nowhere. Could the ancients travel between dimensions? What secrets do they hold, and what did the living hope to find on the other side? Let's take a look. Doorways to Egyptian secrets. In almost every major Egyptian tomb, there is a false doorway. On the other side, physically, is rock, but metaphysically, these doors lead to the realm of the dead. False doors started out in the Old Kingdom circa 2700 BC, or around the 3rd dynasty. They first appeared in the original mastabas, big rectangular blocks that rich people got buried in. Before there were pyramids, there were mastabas. Mastabas were basically proto-pyramids for the early kings. By the 4th dynasty, false doors got fancier, with carvings of the deceased emerging from the doors like those 3D pin artboards from science museums. You know what I'm talking about, where you push it and it's like... Pharaohs like Merenre, Pepi I, and Pepi II turned these doors into their own brand of spiritual statement art. It was quite the artistic and spiritual upgrade. You couldn't be buried without a false door in your tomb, or your spirit would be trapped in this realm. No door, no pass to the afterlife. At least that's what the Egyptians believed over time. Spirits needed a portal to reach the other side. Then something weird happened between 2181 and 2055 BC. Like all good trends, the tomb portal faded for a while and they were replaced by stelae, ancient Egyptian gravestones. Instead of doors, now the trend was to have blocks of stone with inscriptions on them. Suddenly, these gravestones were everywhere. Fun fact, the pyramids were built during the Old Kingdom, and there are no false doors in the pyramids. A lot of people wonder why, seeing as they were supposedly tombs. Other tombs have false doors, but not the pyramids. Maybe there was too much going on already. But then, surprise, surprise, the doors made a comeback during the Middle Kingdom, showing up again in elite coffins like that of Naktukunum. They weren't just on the walls anymore. False doors were being painted directly onto the sarcophagi. Maybe that made it easier for the weary soul to leave this plane of existence. During the New Kingdom of 1570 to 1050 BC, the false door started moonlighting as a backdoor divine hotline where you could talk to the gods. People started saying the gods were on the other side of these portals, and that they could hear your prayers whispered through the stone. These portals were typically placed on western walls of tombs, since that's where the sun sets. The Egyptians believed the sun set into the underworld, so the positioning of the spirit door was very important. Now, if a trip to Egypt is in your future, listen up. Apparently, the most famous ones are the false door of Idu, Meruka, and Nakht. Take a moment. Feel the energy, maybe even try to talk to the spirits on the other side. Just see what happens. Then be sure to come back and tell me about it. The portal dolmens of Ireland. Long before castles and cathedrals, these strange, imposing structures dotted the Irish countryside. Scattered across the landscape are massive stone formations known as portal dolmens. Part portal, part grave, 100% mystery. These megalithic beasts have names like Giant's Graves and Cromlechs, which already tells you something spooky and mythological is going on. This is ancient Ireland's version of a spiritual departure lounge. No boarding pass required, just bones and mystical energy. But what exactly is a portal dolmen? For the Celts, dolmens were portals to the spirit world, built to guide the dead to wherever their ancestors were hanging out in the afterlife. They were very similar to the false doors of Egyptian tombs, only portal dolmens were built to mimic actual portals. You could walk straight through them, though most of the time, as far as the experts know, you didn't vanish into another realm. Each dolmen rocks a massive capstone, a multi-ton slab balanced on upright blocks like Mother Nature's sculpture garden. The capstones have been a bit of a mystery to archaeologists who can't fathom how they were ever lifted onto the upright blocks, especially since these things are thousands of years old, with some predating Stonehenge. Over the centuries, the Irish dolmens have picked up nicknames and legends like they're in a rock band. Sometimes they're called the Giants' Graves, believed by many to be the burial plots of actual giants. Sometimes they're called fairy portals. According to local lore, the fairy folk use these doorways to slip between worlds. Some don't even believe they were used as graves at all.
but strictly by the fairy folk. You might be surprised to hear that dolmens weren't exclusive to Ireland. The Celts lived all across Europe and left behind hundreds of dolmens from Ireland to Britain to Central Europe.
And they're in Asia too. Korea is the country with some of the most dolmens. Why were the Celts and the ancient Koreans making the same portal tombs? It's not like they ever met, right? And it's not like they had the same designer, but both cultures made the exact same portal tombs. Explain that one.
At the Polnabrone Dolmen in County Clare, Ireland, scientists unearthed the remains of 33 people. The bones dated from 3800 to 3200 BC. That's older than the pyramids by about 1,000 years. Alongside the bones were items like a stone axe, pottery, quartz crystals, and jewelry. You know, standard grave goods or a starter pack for a Neolithic adventurer. To make things a little less mystical and a little more gruesome, these dead Neolithic humans had been defleshed before burial. This was a cheerful little practice involving removing the meat from the bones, yum, and then burning them to stop animals from mutilating the corpses. There were no bite marks on the bones, which means the Celts fiercely protected their dead and didn't nibble on them, no matter how hungry they were.
So do you think Celtic spirits pass through these stony portals into the afterlife? Or are they big, glorious windows to nowhere? Maybe if you saw some dolmens in real life, you'd be more convinced one way or the other.
You can always check out Ballykeil Dolmen in South Armagh. It's a classic tripod-style dolmen with a capstone that fell off and was put back on in 1965. Because archaeology is just ancient Lego, really. The Proleak Dolmen is nestled next to a hotel for your convenience. Legend says a Scottish giant carried it here for a duel with Finn McCool. He lost, obviously. No one beats Finn McCool in a duel. Browns Hill Dolmen in Carlow is home to the largest capstone in Ireland, estimated at 120 tons. That's the weight of 20 elephants. And you're telling me that ancient farmers lifted this without cranes? Ancient CrossFit must have been on a whole other level.
My final recommendation to you, my awesome viewer, is Polnabrone Dolmen in Clare. It's the real MVP, perfectly preserved and surrounded by the otherworldly limestone of the Burren, home to 70 tombs and 500 forts. It's basically a prehistoric condo complex. If you do go hunting portals, I suggest you do it at sunset or sunrise. That is when the light hits just right, and you start wondering if you can time travel using energy and sunlight. If you glimpse an alternate reality, please let me know. And now for a quick break because it's shout out time. I want to give a big thank you to Keith Proctor and Josh Beatty for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to join the Origins Explained family.
Ancient Stargate or oldest map of the universe?
Tucked away in the ancient city of Anuradhapura, Sri Lanka, where monks once meditated in peace and harmony, there is a rock carving that's got archaeologists scratching their heads harder than someone trying to explain NFTs to their grandma.
This is called the Sakwala Chakraya, which roughly translates to universe cycle in Sinhalese. Sounds cosmic, right? That's because it is. The carving is almost 6 feet across, etched directly into stone and absolutely dripping with mystery.
Some people think it's a map of the universe. Others say it's a Stargate. A few probably think it's a prehistoric Sudoku board.
Either way, this thing is weird and wonderful. For over 100 years, experts, monks, and a few confused backpackers have been trying to figure out what the carving means. British archaeologist H.C.R. Bell took a stab at it in the 19th century. He described 7 concentric rings inside a square, all sliced into strips like a cosmic pizza, with little circles, phallic figures, umbrellas, and a symbol he called a fret. Bell's best guess was that this carving is a Buddhist cosmological chart, a diagram showing the mythical Mount Meru at the center of the universe, surrounded by 7 seas, rock walls, the sun, moon, and other innumerable worlds floating around.
Sounds epic, right? It's just too bad no one left a note saying, "Dear future humans, this is a map. Love, the ancients." They could have at least given us a clue. I mean, they tried, but we need context.
Modern researchers think the Sakwala Chakraya might be the oldest astronomical map on Earth. If true, it predates GPS, telescopes, and that app that tells you if Mercury's in retrograde. Spoiler, Mercury is always in retrograde when your life is falling apart. But let's not jump straight into Stargate fanfiction just yet. While some believe this is a celestial diagram or even a portal for intergalactic travel, Most scientists dismiss the possibility altogether, saying there's no proof. Still, Sri Lanka's ancient people were definitely stargazing. Professor Raj Somadeva, an archaeologist at the University of Kelaniya, pointed out that early Brahmi inscriptions mentioned stars and cosmic concepts.
The ancients were talking about something called the infinite universe. Deep stuff. It sounds like something you'd find on a stoner's vision board.
Adding another layer to this puzzle is the debate surrounding the Sakwala Chakraya's age. Now things are going to get a little fuzzy. Scholars say the carving dates back to the Anuradhapura kingdom between 400 BC and 1000 AD. Others say it's way older, like 5,000 years older. And a few are claiming it wasn't even built by the ancient Sri Lankans, but by another, more mysterious lost civilization. There is even speculation that Sri Lanka had early waves of enlightened ones arriving before Buddha became a household name. These enlightened ones came down from the heavens to give wisdom to the people. Sounds like some Anunnaki shenanigans to me.
At the end of the day, no one's been able to date the Sakwala Chakraya with certainty. It's carved into bare rock in a secluded part of town, like the creators didn't want it to be found. And you can't carbon date a carving. That's just not how science works. So let me know your thoughts. Is it a cosmic map, an ancient calendar, a metaphysical instruction manual for the soul, a portal?
The Oshoro Stone Circle.
A trip down the portal rabbit hole on YouTube will have you facing some familiar monuments. There's the portal in Ur, the portal in Sri Lanka, Abydos, Peru, but have you heard of the Oshoro Stone Circle in Japan? It's a mysterious arrangement of ancient stones sitting quietly in the southwest of Hokkaido.
To the untrained eye, it might just look like someone got really ambitious with landscaping. But to archaeologists, shamans, and people who watch Ancient Aliens at 2 a.m., it might be something far more intense. Something like, say, a portal to the spirit world. The Oshoro Stone Circle dates to roughly 2400 BC, during Japan's Jomon period. And it's not alone. There are hundreds of these ancient stone circles spread across the Japanese countryside. Many are destroyed. Some have a few stones still standing. Oshoro happens to be the largest of them all.
But what was it for? You know I'm going to say Stargate, portal to the stars, spiritual doorway to the unknown. But maybe let's see what the experts have to say too, just in case.
Scottish archaeologist Neil Gordon Mundo looked at Oshoro in 1908 and said, "Ah yes, clearly this is a prehistoric observatory." He believed the Jomon people were tracking celestial bodies.
And he might not have been entirely off base. Some scholars think Oshoro's builders chose its location specifically for its stellar views of the cosmos. But how the heck were they tracking the stars without telescopes?
Did they just climb as high as possible and squint at the moon? Why build an observatory without, the actual tools to observe celestial objects? Unless they did have the technology and it's just been lost. Then there's the ever-popular theory that the Oshoro Stone Circle was used as a burial ground. Seems logical, right? Big stones, sacred space, lots of reverence. But here's the plot twist. There are no bones. None. Not a single skeleton to be found. Now we're getting into the spiritual side of things. According to J. Edward Kidder, author of the Cambridge History of Japan, the Jomon had a unique view of death. For them, the dead weren't buried to be forgotten. The dead served as mediums to bridge the gap between worlds. In their cosmology, there was the land of the living, the land of the dead, and a weird middle zone in between, like ghost limbo. And guess where the dead were believed to hang out? At sacred stone circles like Oshoro.
These circles functioned as spiritual routers, connecting shamans to the afterlife like 5G for ghosts. Suddenly, the whole stone circle concept seems a lot more otherworldly, wouldn't you agree? Perhaps all stone circles were used like this, as places to hang out with the dead. What do you think? Is the Oshoro Stone Circle a Stargate, graveyard, or a ghost hangout?
The mystic vortexes of Sedona.
Need a little spiritual healing? Nestled between Phoenix and Flagstaff in Arizona, Sedona National Park is a spiritual land for adults who want their chakras aligned and their selfies ethereal. People don't just go to Sedona for no reason. They go to transform, or at least they try to. Sedona is said to be home to actual energy vortexes.
Let's get this out of the way now. A vortex isn't just a fancy way to say swirl. In Sedona, vortexes are said to be Earth energy hotspots where the spiritual signal has full bars. According to the Sedona Visitors Bureau, these areas boost healing, clarity, and offer an all-around cosmic glow-up. It's like being plugged into a spiritual iPhone charger.
But is it real? Are there energy vortexes, portals, and mystical hotspots? Or are the hippies running wild again? According to the believers, there are two types of vortexes in Sedona.
There are upflow vortexes rich in masculine energy. They can be found on mountaintops and mesas and fill you with motivation, creativity, and sudden urges to journal your deepest thoughts while wearing linen. Inflow vortexes are rich in feminine energy. These are found in valleys, which soothe your soul, release old trauma, and might even make you cry for no reason. It's like watching the end of The Notebook, but surrounded by cacti instead of cats.
And yes, these mystical swirls aren't just in Arizona. There are others in Egypt, Peru, and Australia. But Sedona has the better brunch options.
Cathedral Rock gives off deep, healing, feminine energy, while Boynton Canyon is the vortex version of yin-yang. It's masculine and feminine, and said to fill one with a sense of overwhelming peace. Bell Rock is the overachiever, filling visitors with energy like they just drank the greenest smoothie in the world.
If you visited Sedona and had any interesting experiences, tell me about them in the comments. No one has ever proven that there are mystical portals here, but more than a few have claimed to feel their energy.
The truth about Stonehenge. Ah yes, Stonehenge, the biggest stone circle celebrity in the world. But is it a sacred portal, a prehistoric party spot, or Merlin's lost rock collection? Everyone's heard of Stonehenge, and everyone has an opinion. And no one, not even the experts, knows what the heck it was really for. Was it a calendar, a cemetery, a cosmic phone booth to call ancient space gods? Whatever it is, it's been standing on the Salisbury Plains for over 5,000 years, and still no one can agree if it's a temple, a time machine, or just a Neolithic construction project. Let's take a walk around this giant ring of mystery and mild British weather, shall we? Here's the part most people at home don't realize. Stonehenge wasn't built in one go. It had 4 major construction phases, as follows. Phase 1 began in 3200 BC. The builders, whoever they were, dug a giant ditch. They plopped in a wooden building, probably a charnel house, which is like a creepy Airbnb for bones. They added a lonely stone out front, the now famous Heelstone. Phase 2 kicked off in 2400 BC. The builders dug 56 pits, now known as the Aubrey Holes. Experts aren't sure what these were for, but bones and stone mace heads found inside suggest ritual action. Ancient dodgeball? Probably not. More like ancient offerings to nameless gods. Then 400 years went by. We're talking about generations. Phase 3 started in 2000 BC. This was when the big boys were brought to the scene, as in the sarsen stones, weighing up to 50 tons each. They were hauled from 18 miles away by people with no wheels and no Red Bull. They shaped them using stone tools and fitted them together with mortise and tenon joints. Prehistoric carpentry with rocks. This place continued to be important. Phase 4 was in 1600 BC. The builders brought the blue stones from Wales, dropping them in the middle of the big horseshoe shape. And then, just for fun, they carved axe heads and weapons into the stones, added an altar, and that was it. 2,000 years of work complete. Scientists know all this because dating methods are pretty darn reliable in this day and age. But dating the construction phases still doesn't help solve the mystery of what and why. So let's delve into the myths and see what they have to say. Geoffrey of Monmouth, the same guy who spread the myth of King Arthur far and wide, claimed the stones were transported from Africa to Ireland, then flew via Merlin's magic to Britain. That's right, magic. Merlin of Arthurian legend airshipped the rocks across the Irish Sea like an Amazon Prime drone. Another legend says the devil threw the heel stone at a nosy monk and missed. Lucky monk, though there's probably not much truth to that one. It's more likely that Stonehenge was an amphitheater. Some researchers think the circular layout trapped sound, allowing priests to hold rituals or give long speeches. Maybe they stood on the great trilithons, chanting words of power that were made louder by the unique acoustics of the stone circle. It may have made people feel like the gods were yelling at them. Last but not least, there's the theory that Stonehenge was a portal. The Druids built it as a way to open the doorway between worlds. allowing strangers from another planet or maybe even another dimension to come to Earth. Which theory do you support? While you make up your mind, please enjoy these fun facts. In 1915, a guy named Cecil Chubb bought Stonehenge for £6,600, supposedly as a gift for his wife. 3 years later, he donated it to the British people on the condition that locals could visit for free, a rule still honored today. Had Cecil never given it up, Stonehenge could be on private property right now. Maybe some angry farmer would have torn it down. It's happened before. Aramu Muru. In the blazing red rock highlands of Peru, not far from the shimmering shores of Lake Titicaca, stands a doorway carved into the side of a cliff. Knowing today's theme, can you guess where the doorway leads? That's right, to absolutely nowhere. Welcome to Aramu Muru. Locals call it the Gate of the Gods, and depending on who you ask, it's either a sacred site for deep spiritual connection or an ancient alien teleportation device. You know, totally normal things you'd expect to find on a casual hike through Peru. In the 1990s, when frosted tips were in and people still used the word cyberspace, a mountaineering guide named José Luis Delgado Mamani stumbled upon this portal-shaped stone while climbing in the mountains. What he found was a 22-foot-tall stone face with a bizarre little alcove carved right in the center, like someone started making a doorway and then rage quit halfway through. Let's all just be real with each other for a second. From a distance, it does look like a mystical portal, or at the very least, like something you'd see Lara Croft crouching next to before being attacked by ancient ghost llamas. According to the ever-entertaining George Hunt Williamson, American author, mystic, and proud card-carrying member of the Aliens Are Definitely Real Club, Aramu Muru was a high-ranking Inca priest. The name of the portal is the same name as a priest who arrived in Peru from the lost continent of Mu. Not to be confused with the sound a cow makes. In his book, Secret of the Andes, Williamson described Aramu as a knowledge keeper carrying sacred Lemurian scrolls and a golden sun disk that could heal people. Here we go straight into sci-fi. Why not? Legend says when the Spanish showed up with their armor and awkward facial hair, Aramu said no thanks and ran for the hills. He used his golden sun disk to open the portal carved into the stone and vanish. And that was the last that anyone ever saw of him. And it was the last time the stone doorway ever opened. Could there have been others like Aramu Muru in the ancient world, each one with a key to a portal that would take them back to their own world or time or dimension? The Stargate of Ur. Ancient aliens, shadowy governments, lost temples, and a Stargate. Where can you find all of these things jammed into one place? Believe it or not, you might find the alleged nexus of all of this strangeness in Iraq, in the city of Ur. It's one of the oldest cities on Earth, home of the Great Ziggurat, a massive step pyramid that ancient Sumerians built to get closer to the gods, or maybe to boost their Wi-Fi. No one's entirely sure. The Iraqi Stargate legend is a modern conspiracy theory that gained traction in the lead up to and during the 2003 Iraq War. It says that the real reason for the United States-led invasion was not to find weapons of mass destruction, but to gain control of an ancient alien Stargate hidden somewhere. Rumor has it that during the Gulf War, the Great Ziggurat took 400 missile strikes in a row, like someone was really trying to raze it to the ground, maybe to hide something. It may be just a coincidence. Or the beginning of one of the wildest conspiracy theories you've ever heard. Someone, as in the US military, may have been trying to destroy an ancient alien superhighway between worlds. Let's back things up even more. In 1922, British explorer Leonard Woolley was sent to poke around the city of Ur. Officially, he was doing archaeology. Unofficially, though, some say he discovered more than broken pottery and ancient curses. Whispers claim he found an intact Stargate, an actual interdimensional piece of technology left behind by the Anunnaki, Sumer's favorite ancient alien race. You know the tale of the Anunnaki already, but here's a recap just in case your memory is fuzzy. The story goes that aliens from another planet came to Earth, molded humans by changing their DNA, used us as slaves, and then they left, abandoning us to a global flood that didn't finish us off like the Anunnaki had hoped. Finding proof of these aliens has proven a lot more difficult than some would like. Okay, so now back to Ur. In the 1980s, Saddam Hussein ordered a full-blown restoration of the Great Ziggurat. He wanted to restore Old Babylon to its former glory. But according to some experts, this wasn't really about bricks and pride. Supposedly, Hussein was trying to access forbidden tech buried beneath the ziggurat. Things like advanced relics, weapons, and that sweet, sweet Stargate. Some even claim he planned to activate it. Imagine Hussein rolling up to a UN meeting like, yeah, I've got nukes and also a doorway to Alpha Centauri. Which leads us to the 2003 US invasion of Iraq. Some believe the Bush administration wasn't worried about WMDs at all, but were after the Stargate and the Anunnaki bloodline. The theory goes that Saddam had stumbled onto ancient secrets, maybe even a way to reactivate alien contact, and that simply wouldn't fly with the world's power players. They would rather nuke a Stargate than let the public find out that ET's been here since Mesopotamia. So where is this mythical gateway now? After Hussein's downfall, US forces didn't exactly pack up and leave, did they? They reportedly camped out at the site for over a decade. But was it for security? For stability? Or maybe US soldiers were dismantling and moving a multidimensional wormhole device? Let's say for fun that it's real. Let's say they turned it on. Would you walk through it? Or would you pretend you left your oven on and run for the hills? The portal to the Underworld. Warning, things are about to get creepy. Somewhere in the hills near Jerusalem, there is a cave filled with skulls, daggers, oil lamps, and some unsettling ancient vibes. And now, some archaeologists think it was used as a portal to the underworld by actual necromancers. Put away your level 5 skull staff because these necrolords are real, or at least they were real. The site is called Teomim Cave, and it has all the makings of a horror movie set. Dark chambers, spring water trickling eerily through stone, and legends of seriously freaky rituals. According to a study published in the Harvard Theological Review, this cave was once ground zero for necromancy ceremonies. You know, people talking to their long-dead ancestors and summoning ghosts, that sort of thing. Researchers from Bar-Ilan University have been poking around this cave since 2009. To date, they have found 120 oil lamps, some weapons, bowls, coins, and because no cursed cave is complete without them, 3 human skulls. Just the skulls, FYI. No skeletons, no femurs, just floating heads like someone raided Jeffrey Dahmer's fridge. Yikes, maybe too soon. The items were found stuffed into deep cracks and crevices, which makes archaeologists Eitan Klein and Boaz Zissou believe they were intentionally placed there for rituals, possibly involving the dead and magic and who knows what else. The 2 researchers believe the cave might have been used as a nekiomantion, fancy ancient Greek word for a place where people tried to summon and chat with dead folks, like WhatsApp, but for ghosts. This was home of the dark arts. Researchers said the cave has all the ingredients for necromantic cookery, such as oil lamps for lighting up spirits or moody ambiance, metal daggers and axes for maybe blood sacrifices, bowls and vessels for ritual offerings, and skulls for, I don't know, nobody really knows what the skulls were for. Let's skip that one. One possibility is that the ancients believed Teomim Cave was a portal to the underworld. Scientists emphasize that these were likely pagan rituals practiced around 1800 years ago, during the late Roman period, when magic and divination were still part of daily life. As a portal to the underworld, this cave was the perfect place to easily contact the dead, up until Emperor Constantinius II banned necromancy in 357 AD. Apparently, things got too real for the emperor. All this talk of necromancy isn't just speculative storytelling. Our brave archaeologists, Klein and Zissou, cross-referenced ancient texts, magical papyri, and similar artifacts across the Roman world. Skulls, oil lamps, and metal tools are all textbook ritual items used to raise the dead, tell the future, or both. Why only 3 skulls and over 100 lamps, though? The working theory is that the lamps were the main act, left behind during ceremonies aimed at predicting the future or summoning the dead for some supernatural Q&A session. Teomim Cave is now one of the best real-world examples of the archaeology of magic, a growing field that looks at how ancient people practiced the supernatural, beyond temples and polite religious rituals. Would you dare enter this dark and spooky cave? Let me know in the comments.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
Rosslyn Chapel. 7 miles outside Edinburgh in Scotland, there's a breathtaking chapel that has been puzzling historians for centuries. The chapel boasts intricately carved stonework. The stones are embedded with unusual symbolism. In local legend, there are stories of cults, aliens, portals, and Templars. It's called Rosslyn Chapel. The first theory is that the ancient holy building was used as a stargate for extraterrestrials. The beautiful but abnormal patterns in the stonework on the ceiling have led people to think it was used as a portal or a doorway between worlds. Because of the otherworldliness of the geometric patterns on the ceiling, which many say were not the work of human masons, people think aliens did it. While there isn't much evidence to support the idea that people from space built Rosslyn Chapel, there is an unusual amount of UFO sightings in the area. Plus, several of the weird carvings on the wall do kind of resemble reptilians. The chapel is home to a musical masterpiece as well, hidden in the complexity of the highly detailed carvings. A certain musician visited the chapel with his son and noticed peculiarities in the 213 geometric cubes accompanying the angel figures on the walls. After 27 years of looking at the angels and studying the patterns on the cubes, the musician realized something amazing. The geometric patterns correlate to the Chladni pitch. The patterns match with the notes the angels appear to be playing with their instruments. The unbelievable part is that the angels were carved 200 years before the Chladni pitch was invented. There are other weird stories about Rosslyn Chapel, like the one where a master builder killed his apprentice on the grounds. There is a vine carving that twirls around one of the main pillars at the center of the chapel, looking like a DNA helix. There is also a carving of a piece of corn, which is highly unusual. Corn wasn't brought to Europe until after Christopher Columbus journeyed to the Americas. There was no way an architect in Scotland could have known about indigenous plant life on an undiscovered continent. The last big legend surrounding this magical chapel is that it was used by the Knights Templar. After the Knights Templar were destroyed by King Philip IV of France in 1307, those who survived supposedly journeyed to Scotland to seek refuge. One of their properties was located just a few miles from Rosslyn Chapel, so they hid out there like outlaws. Rumor is they had an extremely important relic with them, taken from the Templar headquarters in Paris before its destruction. Whatever treasure they had, perhaps even the Holy Grail or maybe the Ark of the Covenant, was then buried underneath Rosslyn Chapel. Unfortunately, the truth of the holy building puts a damper on the legend of the Templars using it to hide treasure. It wasn't built until the middle of the 15th century by William Sinclair, 1st Earl of Caithness. That was over 100 years after the Knights Templar were eliminated. A small band of aging Templar exiles could have buried biblical treasure in its foundations, but it's impossible to say. Do you believe any of these theories about the Rosslyn Chapel? Let me know in the comments. And now for number 7. But first, it's shoutout time. I want to give a big thank you to Mr. Flash Fives and Cami FAB for supporting this channel. Thanks, guys. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about magical places. Stonehenge. A recent excavation at Stonehenge, the first one in over 40 years, uncovered something very interesting. Researchers found evidence that pilgrims were drawn to Stonehenge from all around Europe to be healed. Stonehenge was believed to have healing properties. The sick, the wounded, and the dying journeyed to Stonehenge for a miracle. Timothy Darville was one of the archaeologists involved in the discovery. When he and members of the team excavated graves near the ancient monument, they were shocked by the number of sick people they found. An unusual volume of skeletons buried at or near Stonehenge showed signs of major disease. Scientists learned this by extracting and analyzing their teeth. Darville told journalists at London Society of Antiquaries that people traveling to Stonehenge were in a state of distress. There were even a pair of skulls found that showed evidence of botched surgery. One of the more famous bodies, known as the Amesbury Archer, had damage to his skull and a gravely injured knee. He died around the time that the large stones were being installed 4,300 years ago. There's more evidence to suggest Stonehenge was a place of magical healing. Researchers have always been a bit baffled by the chips of rock that were purposely chiseled off the large stones, but now it's starting to make sense. Experts believe the chips were used as amulets. Pilgrims traveled to Stonehenge and broke off their own small piece of the monument for themselves, then fashioned it into a magical amulet. They must have believed owning just a tiny piece of Stonehenge could cure the sick and bring them good luck. Knock Shrine. On the evening of August 21st, 1879, it was raining heavily in Ireland. On that evening, in the rain and in the thunder, 15 locals in County Mayo saw the apparition of Mary, Saint Joseph, and Saint John the Evangelist. There was also a lamb. The 4 ghostly figures stood on an altar before a cross inside Knock Shrine. It was one of the greatest miracles in modern Christianity. It also happened at a terrible time for Ireland. The country was in a potato blight year, one of the worst since the famine of 1847. People were starving and dying in the streets because there was nothing to eat. The appearance of the Virgin Mary and the Lamb were much welcomed symbols of hope. The miracle began at 8 p.m. sharp. Mary Byrne and Mary McLaughlin saw the apparitions and couldn't believe their eyes. Mary Byrne ran home to tell her parents. Word quickly spread through the village. Within a handful of minutes, 15 people were standing at Knock Shrine in awe of the unflinching ghosts. After the event, word reached the Vatican. The Archbishop of Tuam, John McHale, initiated an inquiry into the event. All 15 witnesses were interviewed, with each testimony being found satisfactory. No natural cause was discovered for the apparitions. There was no trace of fraud involved. After the apparitions were seen, everyone went back to their lives. Nobody was trying to get rich or cause a fuss about it. Then came the miracles. A deaf person suddenly recovered their hearing upon visiting Knock Shrine 12 days after the apparitions. In October 1880, a year after, Archdeacon Kavanaugh had recorded 637 confirmed miracle cures. Popes have visited Knock Shrine because of its holy magic. Most recently, Pope Francis blessed a new processional statue of Our Lady of Knock in Rome before it was sent to Ireland. The Temple of Daka. The Temple of Daka is an ancient Egyptian temple which stands in the Nubian area at the very south of the country. South of Aswan, right at the very edge of modern Sudan, looms the mystical temple built around the 2nd century BC. It was constructed in dedication of the deity Thoth. Thoth was the god of magic and supernatural power. He was also the god of writing and knowledge, but was most venerated by practitioners of magic. The temple was rediscovered by European explorers in the 19th century, totally buried under sand and silt. It was slowly cleared from the desert, only to be threatened by the construction of the Aswan High Dam in the 1960s. Archaeologists dismantled the entire temple and put it back together safely out of the reach of floodwaters. Nobody knows what went on in the temple. When it was first built, the temple was nothing but a single room visited by priests of Thoth. They likely gave offerings to the god of magic, things like inks and writing cases. Any tool used by a scribe was considered a good offering to Thoth. The god was also called upon because of his magical prowess. Anyone trying to cast a spell or create a curse almost definitely visited a temple of Thoth for guidance. Thoth was credited with creating the Book of the Dead, the most sacred of all the Egyptian books of magic. Mythology says that he and the goddess Isis created the Book of Breathings together. It was used by funerary priests to help dead people continue their existence in the next life. Although the Temple of Daka started as a modest one-room chapel, it soon grew. By the time the Romans conquered the area in the 1st century BC, it was transformed into a temple fortress with tall walls and guard towers. Lake Titicaca. Lake Titicaca straddles the South American nations of Bolivia and Peru. It sits at a whopping 12,500 feet above sea level. That makes Lake Titicaca the highest navigable lake on the planet. To the south stretches a tundra plain, while the Andean mountains rise in the distance. 500 years ago, the Inca civilization believed the lake was the center of the world. It's a belief that was handed down through generations of people in the Andes Mountains. People had already been living at Lake Titicaca for an estimated 4,500 years before the rise of the Inca. For the Andean people, the lake was always seen as the center of the cosmos. It was from the lake that the sun, moon, and stars were born. They believe the first humans also crawled out of the lake's calm blue waters. In Inca mythology, Lake Titicaca was a place of powerful magic. Viracocha, the creator god, first made a race of stone giants from the lake. But after the stone giants proved too troublesome, Viracocha created humans. However, the humans weren't very good either. They were greedy and vain and hedonistic. Viracocha was disgusted with the creations, so he sent a flood to destroy the earth. The creation story of the Inca is very similar to the flood myth from the Bible. After the flood, the few survivors were allowed to live. They began civilization on the shores of Lake Titicaca. The most magical place in the area is the Island of the Sun, situated inside the lake. Archaeologists have found plenty of artifacts, mysterious temples, and abandoned palaces on the island. They think this was the epicenter of Inca religion during the last part of the 15th century, right before the Spanish invasion. The Harz Mountains. In the German highlands, the Harz Mountains attract believers in witches and lovers of magic from across the globe. The whole place is steeped in pagan folklore and mystical legends. One town gets more attention than the others, a place called Quedlinburg. It's a town that looks straight out of the Middle Ages. The medieval houses were untouched by World War II. There are still over 1,000 fully preserved timbered homes straight out of a fairy tale. Signs of magic are everywhere you look. Take a stroll around Quedlinburg and you won't see a single piece of litter on the cobbled streets. But you will, if your eyes are sharp enough, notice the mystical symbols carved into the beams of ancient buildings. Hexagrams, crosses, and witch markings. These were carved into pieces of timber by the medieval inhabitants to keep away demons and sorcerers. Between the years 1569 and 1583, 30 witches were burned at Quedlinburg, followed by an estimated 133 witches in 1589. In the 16th century, people believed witches congregated around the highest peak of the Harz Mountains to consort with the devil. These days, Quedlinburg and the surrounding area have accepted their association with medieval witchcraft. But do you think this really was home to an ancient coven of witches? Were there magical women meeting at the top of the mountain? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The Mogao Caves. The Mogao Caves, also called the Caves of the Thousand Buddhas, are a series of caverns far to the northwest of China, near the edge of Mongolia. The area was an extremely busy part of the Silk Road in the 4th century AD, with the oasis town a popular stop for traders and pilgrims. The first caves were carved by monks into the face of a rock cliff 1,700 years ago. Soon, the caves were occupied by nearly 400 monks. What nobody knows is how the caves became one of the greatest repositories for mystical information in the world. In 1900, a Taoist monk who was the guardian and abbot of the cave temples moved a painting. Behind the wall painting was the concealed entrance to a massive archive of around 50,000 documents. The monk, named Wang Yuanlu, had accidentally revealed a lost trove of knowledge beyond human reckoning. 50,000 manuscripts, mysterious maps, and books of sacred wisdom. All of this stuff was buried behind a door in one of the caves for more than 1,000 years. All the manuscripts still haven't been decoded yet. It is a big mystery where the scrolls came from, and who locked them in the secret chamber. The discovery was like as if someone found a lost chamber from the Library of Alexandria, only in China. So who knows what mysterious knowledge will be revealed. Broceliande Forest. Broceliande is the name of an enchanted forest found throughout the folklore of medieval Europe. It's said to be a place of magic and mystery, traveled by wizards and witches alike. It's featured in multiple medieval texts, leading some scholars to think the forest must have been real. It's especially popular in Arthurian legends. Characters like Merlin, the Lady of the Lake, and Arthur's Knights of the Round Table journeyed through Broceliande Forest on their adventures. The very first mention of the forest came in 1160. It first appeared in the chronicle Roman de Rau, written by Norman poet Wace. The interesting thing about Robert's chronicle is that most of it is historically accurate. He wrote about the Dukes of Normandy and the rise of the Viking Rollo. He also described the famous Battle of Tinchebray. He talked about the Breton Knights and about his own travels to Brittany. Robert searched for the wonders he had heard about in local legends. He hunted for fairies and magic. He even looked for Broceliande Forest, believing it was home to the wizard Merlin's tomb. Alas, Robert Wace never found any magical forests or wizard tombs. He once wrote, "I saw the forest and looked for marvels, but found none. I went as a fool and came back as a fool." He was essentially calling himself dumb for believing there was a magical forest that he could stroll into like the knights in the stories. It's the belief of many that Broceliande was a real place. Modern scholars think it was a vast, sprawling forest in Brittany, though most experts don't believe it was ever home to fairies or magicians. Do you believe there are places in the world where magic is real? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching! Be sure to subscribe to support the channel and come back soon. Bye!